Welcome to the channel, where real stories unfold and the unexpected is always just around the corner. Today's story is about power, pride, and the moment it all backfires. But before we dive in, I want to know, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. We love seeing how far these stories reach. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss what's coming next. Trust me, tomorrow's story is one you do not want to miss. Let's get into it. She hired fake cops to evict me. Then I flashed my FBI badge. The neighborhood had always been quiet, comfortable, suburban, peaceful. That is, until Debbie Simmons decided she was in charge. At 52 years old, she wasn't elected to anything, didn't hold any real position, but had somehow self-appointed herself as the face of the local homeowners association. Debbie treated every sidewalk crack, mailbox shade, and blade of grass as if it were part of her personal kingdom. She walked the neighborhood like a sheriff on patrol, clipboard in hand, ready to jot down every violation she could spot. Didn't mow your lawn exactly every 7 days? You'd hear from Debbie. Chose light blue curtains instead of white? Expect a knock at your door. Forgot to bring in your trash bin within an hour of pickup? That was grounds for notice, according to her. For months, most of us either ignored her or did our best to avoid confrontation. She was a nuisance, sure, but mostly just annoying, until the day she crossed the wrong driveway. That day started like any other. I'd just finished a long day at work, 10 hours behind a desk, 2 more stuck in traffic. I pulled into my driveway, still wearing my dress shirt and slacks, my tie loosened, my brain halfway to relaxation mode. I stepped out of my car, took a deep breath, and that's when I saw her. Debbie was standing at the edge of my property like she was guarding the gates to Fort Knox. Arms crossed, lips tight, expression smug. I already knew it was going to be one of those conversations. "Evening, Debbie," I said, forcing a polite smile. "What now?" "You can't park here," she said flatly, waving her clipboard like it was a badge of authority. I blinked. "This is my driveway." She nodded with mock sympathy. "Not according to HOA guidelines. This is a private road and unauthorized residents aren't allowed to use this space." I laughed, thinking she had to be joking. "I own this house. I live here." Her smirk widened. "Well, the HOA disagrees, and we've already taken action." I didn't know it then, but what came next would turn this petty HOA drama into a scene worthy of a federal investigation. I barely had time to process Debbie's smug words before 2 men appeared at the end of my driveway. They walked with purpose, wearing matching dark blue shirts and shiny badges clipped to their chests. At first glance, they looked official, not quite cops, but close enough to make any normal person pause. One was tall and broad-shouldered, his belt carrying a bulky black object that looked like a baton, cheap, plastic-looking. The second guy had a military-style buzz cut and was holding a pair of plastic handcuffs like he actually planned to use them. The tall one cleared his throat. "Sir, we've received multiple complaints about an unauthorized individual trespassing on HOA property." I raised an eyebrow. "Trespassing? On my own property?" Debbie, still standing off to the side with her arms crossed, chimed in. "That's right. These officers will escort you off the premises immediately. HOA policy is clear." I almost laughed, almost. But something about the way these 2 guys stood, the way they spoke, the complete lack of real equipment on their belts, it didn't sit right. The shorter guy stepped forward, plastic cuffs in hand. "Sir, we need you to come with us." That's when it clicked. These weren't real cops. These were rent-a-cop wannabes, probably security guards at best, hired by Debbie to play police. I smiled and slowly reached into my pocket. "You boys do realize impersonating law enforcement is a federal offense, right?" Debbie scoffed. "Oh, please, you think you're above the rules?" I pulled out my wallet, flipped it open, and held it out. "Special Agent Mark Peterson, FBI." Silence. Thick, sudden, and absolute. Debbie's smug grin vanished. Her face turned ghost white. She took a step back, blinking rapidly like she'd just seen a ghost. The tall fake cop muttered, "Oh, shush!" But I cut him off. "Impersonating a federal officer is serious business," I said, stepping toward him. "And if you lay a hand on me, you'll be in even deeper." The shorter guy started backing away. "Look, man, we were just—" I raised a hand. "Save it." And then, just as the tension peaked, a familiar sound echoed in the distance. Sirens. The real cops were on their way. The sound of sirens grew louder, bouncing off the houses and down the quiet suburban street like a warning bell. Debbie's eyes widened in slow motion, the color draining from her face as reality started to hit. She glanced at the two fake officers, suddenly unsure, suddenly scared. I didn't know they were fake, she muttered under her breath, almost as if she was trying to convince herself more than anyone else. The taller guy with the fake baton stepped back, hands slightly raised, trying to play it cool. Look, man, this is all a misunderstanding. We were just. I didn't even look at him. You were just impersonating law enforcement and trying to remove a federal agent from his own property. Yeah, that's a misunderstanding the FBI takes real seriously. Within moments, the first squad car came into view, tires screeching as it stopped at the curb. Then another, and another. Red and blue lights flashed against the windows of every house on the block. Curious neighbors stepped out of their homes or peeked through blinds, phones already in hand, recording everything. From the front car stepped Officer Daniels, a longtime friend of mine and a detective with the local PD. He took one look at the scene and shook his head. "Let me guess," he said, walking up. "Fake cops?" "Yep," I nodded. "Courtesy of Debbie." Debbie gasped. Wait, wait! I didn't know they were fake. They told me they worked with the HOA." Officer Daniels raised an eyebrow. "There is no record of your HOA hiring security. And even if they did, you don't have the authority to enforce evictions, especially not on a homeowner who's an FBI agent." The two fake officers didn't bother arguing. They were already being cuffed and read their rights. The tall one tried to explain, mumbling something about just doing a side gig, but no one was listening. Debbie stood frozen, completely overwhelmed, her clipboard hanging limp in her hand. The neighbors, the same ones she had bossed around for months, now whispered to one another, some smirking, others filming. Justice wasn't just arriving, it had already pulled into the driveway. Debbie stood frozen in place, still clutching her clipboard like it held any real power. But this time, no one was listening to her. The illusion she had built, of authority, of control, was crumbling in front of the entire neighborhood. One of the real officers turned to her, pulling out a notepad. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to come down to the station for questioning." Her head jerked up, panic in her eyes. "Wait, questioning? Am I under arrest?" "That depends," he said calmly, "on what else we uncover. Hiring individuals to impersonate law enforcement is a serious offense. So is attempting to have someone removed from their property under false pretenses." Debbie looked around, desperate for someone to defend her. But the neighbors she had scolded for their grass length or mailbox paint were now filming, smirking, shaking their heads. No one stepped in to help her, not this time. She turned back to me, eyes wide and voice trembling. You set me up." I shook my head slowly. "No, Debbie. You did this to yourself. All I did was let the truth show up with sirens." She didn't argue. She couldn't. The real officers gently took her by the arm and began escorting her toward the squad car. She didn't resist, but the look on her face said it all. Disbelief, embarrassment, and the sting of finally being held accountable. As they walked her away, one of the neighbors called out, "Maybe now we can paint our mailboxes in peace." A few people chuckled. I stood at the top of my driveway, watching it all unfold. The fake cops in one car, Debbie in another, and the neighborhood finally breathing a sigh of relief. For years, she had played queen of the block, terrorizing everyone with rules she made up on the spot. But today, the crown cracked. Officer Daniels walked back toward me, shaking his head. "Man, I've seen a lot. But HOA warfare and FBI agents? That's a new one," I chuckled. "Just another day in suburbia." And just like that, the neighborhood was quiet again. But this time, for real. As the last squad car turned the corner and disappeared down the street, the crowd of neighbors slowly began to drift back to their homes. Some still shaking their heads, others whispering, "Did that really just happen?" For the first time in a long time, the street felt calm. No clipboards, no passive-aggressive notes taped to doors. Just peace. I stood there for a moment, soaking it all in. Debbie Simmons, the self-appointed HOA tyrant, had finally been exposed. She wasn't a leader. She wasn't protecting the community. She was manipulating people, pretending to hold power she never had, until she crossed the wrong person. A few neighbors walked over, offering handshakes, pats on the back, and a few well-earned laughs. "Did you really say FBI?" one asked, grinning. I nodded. flashed the badge and everything. Man, he said, still grinning, she's never gonna live this down. And honestly, that wasn't the goal. I didn't want to humiliate her. I just wanted it to stop. The fake rules, the intimidation, the nonsense. And now, maybe, it finally would. Later that evening, I sat on my porch, a cold drink in hand, watching the sun dip below the rooftops. The street was quiet, peaceful, and not the kind of peace you pretend to have. The real kind, the earned kind. Across the road, someone was finally repainting their mailbox, neon blue, proudly against everything Debbie had once demanded. I smiled. Justice didn't always show up in grand ways. Sometimes it was just about standing up when no one else could. Sometimes it was about drawing a line, even if you had to do it alone. But I hadn't been alone. The neighborhood saw what she'd done, and when the truth finally came to light, no one defended her. That said everything. Debbie had spent years trying to control a community that never asked her to. But in the end, her greatest mistake wasn't going after me. It was thinking no one would stand up to her. As for me, I went back inside, loosened my tie a little more, and finally, enjoyed a quiet night at home in a neighborhood free from HOA drama. Now that you've heard the full story, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever dealt with someone like Debbie, a person who takes control without authority and makes everyone's life just a little more stressful? Or maybe you've experienced a situation where standing up for yourself was the only way to bring back peace? Drop your story in the comments below. Whether it's about a power-hungry neighbor, a wild HOA rule, or a moment when justice finally showed up, we want to hear it. Your experience might just connect with someone else going through the same thing. Also, let us know where you're watching from. It's always incredible to see how far these stories reach. From small towns to big cities, every viewer adds something special to this growing community. If you made it this far, comment Neighborhood Justice so we know you stayed until the end. We read every comment, and your words help keep this channel alive with real voices, real stories, and real people who aren't afraid to speak up. So go ahead, scroll down, share your thoughts, and let's keep the conversation going. And don't forget to subscribe. Tomorrow's story might just be even crazier.